We live in interesting times. For the headlines. The United States says there's no basis to ground Boeing 737 MAX airplanes after a second deadly crash involving the model in less than 5 months prompted governments worldwide to ban the aircraft. Australian Cardinal George Pell is sentenced to 6 years in prison for, quote, brazen sexual abuse of 2 choir boys, the most senior member of the clergy to be convicted of historical child sex abuse. British MPs will vote on whether the country should leave the EU without a deal in 16 days' time after overwhelmingly rejecting a draft divorce agreement. Desperate Housewives star Felicity Huffman is indicted in a multi-million-dollar scam to help children of the American elite cheat their way into top universities. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us, and now to the news. The United States said there's no basis to ground Boeing 737 MAX airplanes after a second deadly crash involving the model in less than 5 months prompted governments worldwide to ban the aircraft. Despite the aviation giant's assurances that the plane is safe and reliable, the European Union, Britain, and India joined China and other countries grounding the plane or banning it from their airspace as they await the results of the investigation into the crash. But the U.S. has so far refused to take similar action against the American aerospace giant's best-selling workhorse aircraft. Thus far, our review shows no systemic performance issues and provides no basis to order grounding the aircraft. That is according to Federal Aviation Administration FAA Chief Daniel Elwell in a statement. A new Ethiopian Airlines 737 MAX 8 went down minutes into a flight from Addis Ababa to Nairobi on Sunday, killing all 157 people on board. Now that followed the October crash of a new Lion Air jet of the same model in Indonesia, which killed 189 people shortly after takeoff from Jakarta. The widening actions against the aircraft puts pressure on Boeing, the world's biggest plane manufacturer, to prove the MAX planes are safe. And the company has said it's rolling out flight software updates by April that could address issues with a faulty sensor. Hong Kong, meanwhile, barred Boeing 737 MAX airliners from its airspace, the latest in a series of government bans worldwide in the wake of the deadly plane crash in Ethiopia. Despite Boeing's assurances in the wake of the disaster, the EU, Britain, and India joined China and other countries grounding the plane or banning it from their airspace as they await the results of the crash. The semi-autonomous Chinese City Civil Aviation Department, or CAD, said it was imposing a temporary suspension from 6 p.m. local time on Wednesday until further notice on operation of Boeing B737 MAX aircraft into, out of, and over Hong Kong. The ban is solely a precautionary measure to ensure aviation safety and protect the public, according to a CAD spokesman. Several airlines have already grounded MAX 8s in their fleets, but many others are continuing to fly the plane pending an investigation into the crash and possible guidance from Boeing itself. An aviation security expert reacted to Boeing's crisis following the crash of one of its planes in Ethiopia. And he talks about the Boeing 737 MAX ban from a growing number of countries around the world. Let's listen in.
We are on the threshold of a brand new kind of airplane. It looks like the old kind of airplane. It looks like a 737, but as aircraft are developing and evolving, aircraft are becoming more and more digital. As we automate aircraft, the pilots become less and less familiar with hand flying, with tangibly interacting with the aircraft, so that when there is an emergency, they're forced to deal with the aircraft manually, but they only deal with it in abnormal circumstances. So it makes the difficult situations more difficult. They don't know if the air crews who are flying into their airspace or are flying in their airlines have been proven to be trained and adept at this new procedure. It's the confidence that is important to regain and to establish. So it's not just a mechanical, it's not just a software problem, but it is a problem of communication and trust.
Meanwhile, some U.S. passengers admit to feeling hesitant and concerned about the prospect of flying on a Boeing 737 MAX 8. Many countries have banned it from their skies following the crash in Ethiopia on Sunday. This is the second involving the model in 5 months, but U.S. regulators have stopped short of doing so. Take a look.
We heard about the accident the day before yesterday, I think, and immediately we're doing a little research. We knew that we weren't flying that kind of a plane, and so we were pretty comfortable traveling today.
It makes me a little wary. If everyone else is grounding these planes, I definitely think we should too. I don't think that's the plane I just took off on. I checked the little box when you walk in. Mine was manufactured in 2016, but if I had known that it was, I definitely wouldn't have felt safe.
Ethiopia doesn't have the equipment to analyze the black boxes from Sunday's deadly Ethiopian Airlines plane crash, and is now considering sending them abroad, according to a spokesman for the airline. Spokesman Biniam Dempsey, quote, said it could be sent abroad because there's no equipment to read it here. The airline's chief executive, Tewolde Jebre Mariam, earlier told CNN the black boxes would have to be examined outside the country in a destination to be chosen by investigators, possibly the United States or, quote, a closer country in Europe, in the interest of proximity and in the interest of speed. And the news continues here in Eagle News International. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Health is our most important
Welcome back. Governor Gavin Newsom will Wednesday impose a moratorium on carrying out the death penalty in California, granting temporary reprieve to the 737 inmates on death row, the largest such group in the United States. Newsom is a Democrat who took office in January and a long-standing opponent of the death penalty, which was last carried out in California in 2006. He said the death penalty is inconsistent with our bedrock values and strikes at the very heart of what it means to be a Californian. Newsom will say, according to prepared remarks from his office, the international killing of another person is wrong, and as governor, I will not oversee the execution of any individual, he will say. The governor plans to sign an executive order to block the death penalty in his state. It will also withdraw California's lethal injection protocol and close the execution chamber at San Quentin Prison, according to his office. It doesn't provide for the release of any death row inmates from prison. Disgraced Australian Cardinal George Pell was on Wednesday sentenced to 6 years in prison for the brazen sexual abuse of 2 choir boys in what the judge lambasted as a grave abuse of power. Pell didn't take the stand in his defense, but in a video of his police interview in Rome in 2016, he called the allegations against him deranged falsehood and a load of absolute and disgraceful rubbish. Take a look.
This is in the sacristy at the cathedral after Sunday Mass.
Yes.
What need I say anymore? What a load of garbage and falsehood and deranged falsehood.
On charge 1, being the indecent act against R, I convict and sentence you to 2 years and 6 months imprisonment. On charge 2, being the sexual penetration against J, I convict and sentence you to 4 years imprisonment. On charge 3, being the indecent act against J where you touched his genitals, I convict and sentence you to 2 years and 6 months imprisonment. On charge 4, being the indecent act against J where you touched your own genitals in the presence of J, I convict and sentence you to 15 months imprisonment. On charge 5, being the indecent act against J during the second episode, I convict and sentence you to 18 months imprisonment. I direct that the sentence of 4 years imposed on charge 2 is the base sentence. I further direct that 12 months of the sentence imposed on charge 1, 4 months of the sentence imposed on charge 3, 2 months of the sentence imposed on charge 4, and 6 months of the sentence imposed on charge 5 are to be served cumulatively upon charge 2 and upon each other. This means that I sentence you to a total effective sentence of 6 years imprisonment.
The former Vatican No. 3, who managed church finances and helped elect 2 popes, was sentenced in a Melbourne court on 5 counts, including oral rape and molestation of the boys in 1996 and 97. Judge Peter Kidd, whose remarks broadcast live on television, said the 77-year-old was guilty of appalling, offending, and breathtakingly arrogant attacks that took advantage of his position of authority over the boys, then aged 13. Kidd said the cardinal, with a significant history of cardiac problems, would be eligible for parole in late 2022, but acknowledged that he may not live to be released from prison.
In my view, the first episode in the priest's sacristy involved a brazen and forcible sexual attack upon the 2 victims. I am conscious that the term of imprisonment, which I am about to impose upon you, carries with it a real, as distinct from theoretical, possibility that you may not live to be released from prison.
The Cardinal, a household name in Australia with friends that include prime ministers and business magnates, maintains his innocence and will appeal. The prospect of further legal proceedings and the relatively short sentence tempered victims' response to the news.
You know, and people have lived with life sentences for all the pain and the suffering they were put through. And even now, today, we're still not believed.
I thought the Royal Commission made a recommendation that a sex offender or pedophile's good behaviour, character, should not be used to give them a lighter sentence or a reduced sentence. But I think the best thing is that he's the highest official in Australia to be incarcerated in a prison. He's being treated like every other common pedophile. He's now George Pell, convicted pedophile.
Meanwhile, barrister Robert Richter, who represented Australian Cardinal George Pell during the trial, is mugged by the media after Pell was sentenced to 6 years in jail for choir boy abuse. Let's take a listen.
Why won't you represent
It's normal for counsel to seek independent counsel.
And what does your client feel about the sentence he was having?
No comment.
Was it a witch hunt?
No comment. You be the judge.
In other news, an Italian cargo ship sank about 330 kilometers off the western Atlantic coast of France on Tuesday after rescue vessels were unable to put out a fire that broke out late Sunday, according to officials. All 27 people aboard the Grande America were rescued without injury on Monday night. The ship was on its way from Hamburg, Germany to Casablanca in Morocco before the blaze, which intensified over the past 24 hours. French naval authorities said on Twitter. French Environment Minister François de Rugy told lawmakers in Paris on Tuesday that officials still did not know what the ship was transporting, but that anti-pollution measures were already being taken. A first tugboat to reach the ship was unable to extinguish the fire, and 2 others were on their way to the site Tuesday when the ship sank in waters that are about 15,000 feet deep. British MPs overwhelmingly rejected Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit deal for a second time, pitching Britain into the unknown just a few days or 17 days before it's due to split from the European Union.
The ayes to the right, 242. The noes to the left, 391. So the noes have it, the noes have it. Unlock!
The move risks unleashing economic chaos as Britain is scheduled to end ties with its biggest trade partner after 46 years on March 29. No matter what, appealing to MPs in a voice half breaking due to a cold, May had urged them to avoid the economic shock of leaving without an agreement. But she also warned Eurosceptics, many of whom have campaigned to leave the EU for their whole careers, that if her deal failed, so might Brexit. May has promised to allow MPs to vote on a no-deal option on Wednesday, and if that is rejected, to decide on Thursday whether to ask the EU to delay Brexit.
Therefore, tonight we will table a motion for debate tomorrow to test whether the House supports leaving the European Union without a deal on the 29th of March. I'm passionate about delivering the result of the referendum, but I equally passionately believe that the best way to do that is to leave in an orderly way with a deal. But let me be clear. Voting against leaving without a deal and for an extension does not solve the problems we face.
Michel Barnier, the EU chief Brexit negotiator, said Brussels had nothing more to offer and must now brace for the possibility of a messy divorce. The EU has done everything it can to help get the withdrawal agreement over the line. The impasse can only be solved in the UK. Our no-deal preparations are now more important than ever before, Barnier tweeted. Meanwhile, Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the main opposition Labour Party, who has been trying to force snap elections, said May must now admit that her government's overarching strategy had already failed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government has been defeated again by an enormous majority, and they must now accept their deal, their proposal, the one the Prime Minister has put, is clearly dead and does not have the support of this House. The Prime Minister has run down the clock, and the clock has been run out on her. Maybe it's time instead we had a general election and the people could choose who their government should be.
In other news, at least 66 people have been killed and 141,000 affected after heavy rains deluged central and northern Mozambique, the government has said as it appealed for funds to manage the crisis. The government has decreed a red alert due to the continuing rains and the approach of the tropical cyclone Idai, expected to reach the country between Thursday to Friday, said Cabinet spokeswoman Ana Comoana. She spoke to reporters late Tuesday after a cabinet meeting in Maputo to discuss the emergency. The floods in one of Africa's poorest countries have already destroyed 5,756 homes, affecting 15,467 households and 141,325 people. In neighboring Malawi, floods have already claimed 45 lives and left over 230,000 people without shelter. Malawi's meteorological department has warned of more rains and flooding in the country's south between Thursday and Sunday. In other news, a media scrum crowded a courthouse in Los Angeles after desperate housewife star Felicity Huffman is indicted in a multi-million-dollar scam to help children of the American elite cheat their way into top universities. The alleged scheme involving helping students cheat on entrance exams as well as getting non-athletic students admitted on fake athletic scholarships. Elite schools Yale, Stanford, and Georgetown were among the destination universities. Now, according to the documents, Hoffman made a charitable contribution of $15,000 to participate in the scheme on behalf of her eldest daughter. She allegedly arranged to use the scheme a second time for her younger daughter before deciding not to do so. Huffman was charged with conspiracy to commit mail fraud and honest services mail fraud. She was secretly recorded discussing the scheme with a cooperating witness. The paper said the cooperating witness met Ms. Huffman and her husband, actor William H. Macy, at their LA home and explained the scam to them. The witness said the pair, quote, agreed to the plan. Mr. Macy was not indicted. Huffman appeared in a Los Angeles court later on Tuesday and was released on $250,000 bail. The judge ordered the actress to restrict her travel to the continental U.S.
We're not talking about donating a building so that a school's more likely to take your son or daughter. We're talking about deception and fraud, fake test scores, fake athletic credentials, fake photographs, bribed college officials.
When approximately 300 special agents from the FBI and the IRS criminal investigations set out to arrest 46 individuals across the country for their roles in an international college admissions bribery and money laundering scam. We believe all of them, parents, coaches, and facilitators, lied, cheated, and covered up their crimes at the expense of hardworking students and taxpayers everywhere. Our investigation began last May after we uncovered evidence of a large-scale, elaborate fraud while working an unrelated undercover operation. Following 10 months of intense investigative efforts using a variety of sophisticated techniques, the FBI uncovered what we believe is a rigged system.
In other news, South Korean pop star Seungri announced his retirement from show business amid mounting criminal investigations, including his alleged involvement in a sex for investment scandal. The 29-year-old singer from K-pop boy band Big Bang is accused of lobbying potential investors by offering sex services at multiple nightclubs in Seoul's posh Gangnam district. He faced police questioning at the weekend. The singer, who also owns a global franchise restaurant business, suspended his entertainment career in February and then canceled concerts scheduled for later this month. He is also linked to an ongoing police case over Burning Sun, a nightclub where he was a public relations director, for multiple investigations into illegal narcotics use and sexual assault. He said, "I have faced heavy criticism from the public for the last month and a half, and I'm being probed by all investigative authorities in the country." Seungri said, "As I've been branded as a national traitor, I cannot stand the fact that I am harming others for my own sake." He added, Big Bang is one of Korea's most popular boy bands, having sold more than 140 million records worldwide since their debut in 2006. But its members have often been in the limelight for misconduct. Rapper T.O.P. or Top received suspended jail sentence in 2017 for smoking marijuana multiple times after he was hospitalized for a drug overdose. Band leader G-Dragon was also investigated for smoking marijuana in 2011, although he was released without indictment. In other news, China on Wednesday offered to help Venezuela as it faces a crippling multi-day power blackout that President Nicolas Maduro has blamed on the United States.
中方对此表示关切，中方希望委方能够尽快查明这次事故的原因，恢复正常的供电和社会秩序。中方愿意为委内瑞拉电力系统恢复提供帮助和技术支持。
Power has been restored to some areas in Venezuela since the weekend, but the supply has been intermittent and often drops out. President Maduro called for support from allies, including Russia and China, as well as the United Nations, in investigating, quote, the U.S. cyber attack he said was responsible for the blackout. Liu said China was very concerned about reports of a cyber attack, but they declined to directly blame the United States. While President Maduro pointed the finger at Washington, critics have long blamed the government for failing to maintain the power grid. Opposition leader Juan Guaido, 35 years old, is seeking to capitalize on public anger over the blackout, which has piled misery on a population suffering years of economic crisis and shortages of food and medicine under Maduro. The Senate will investigate the unusual water shortage being experienced in Metro Manila and parts of Rizal, which are being serviced by the Manila Water Company. Take a look. Senators expressed alarm about the extended water service interruptions as they noted that only one water concessionaire is having problems with water supply. Senator Juan Edgardo Soniangara observed that while Manila Water had been suffering supply woes, its West Zone counterpart, Maynilad, wasn't. Angara said Congress should also look into the water shortage problem so it could come up with long-term solutions to ensure adequate water supplies amid the country's rapidly rising population and continued economic development. The Senate Committee on Public Services, headed by Senator Grace Poe, said that the hearing on the water crisis in the country would be held next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Manila Water, which covers the east zone of Metro Manila and Rizal Province, has advised its customers to expect more water interruptions in the following days due to limited water supplies as El Nino begins to set in the country.
The Department of Finance is recommending.
In Nigeria, a three-story residential building collapsed Wednesday in a densely populated part of Lagos, and local media said there could be many casualties, including school children. The Nigerian news station Channels TV reported that a primary school was located on the top floor of the building, with pupils feared killed and others trapped. The collapse occurred in the Itafaji area of Lagos Island. A spokesman for the Nigerian Emergency Services, Ibrahim Farinloy, confirmed the incident. Building collapses are tragically common in Nigeria, where building regulations are routinely flouted. In September of 2014, 116 people, 84 of them South Africans, died when a 6-story building collapsed as a celebrity televangelist, Joshua TB, was preaching. An inquiry found the building had been built illegally and had structural flaws. And we'll be back with the business news with Cesar Vallejos right after this short break. Stay tuned.
Health is our most important asset, and it should always be a constant effort to seek ways to take care of it. That includes professional medical help from the best available. The Manila-Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated is known as one of the most specialized centers in medical services, backed by several experienced physicians in Chinese medicine. At an accuracy rate of 98%, countless patients who visited Manila-Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated have already been treated and cured.
Marami ko ospital na napuntahan, pero wala ring nangyayari. Somebody introduced me to Manila-Beijing Medical Associated. After 2 treatments, gumanda ang pakiramdam ko.
My friends introduced me Manila-Beijing Medical Associated, and luckily, I got cured. So I sincerely want to thank the doctors of Manila-Beijing Medical Associated.
For the past 30 years, ang dami ko nang na-take na mga gamot. Nothing happened to me. So until one my friend introduced me to Manila-Beijing Medical Associated, you know what? All my illness was cured.
For any health problems or incurable diseases, you can visit Manila-Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated, located at 843B Sabino Padilla Street, Binondo, Manila.
Pep News, Linggo, alas 4 hanggang alas 5 ng hapon.
Ako si Tina Panel, abangan niyo po ako dito sa Young Once Upon a Time Season 2 ngayong pong linggo, alas 8 ng gabi dito lang sa Net 25.
For Business News, this is Cesar Vallejos. International credit watcher Moody's Investors Service announced that it has assigned a high economic strength to the credit profile of the Philippines, owing largely to its robust growth amid global headwinds. Moody's made the announcement after the credit watcher completed its periodic review of the Philippine economic dynamics. Christian de Guzman, Moody's Vice President and Senior Credit Officer, said the ability of the Philippines to post a relatively strong growth balances out the fact that the country still has a low GDP per capita compared to similarly rated peers. For other metrics, Moody's gave a moderate rating to the country's institutional strength, taking into account a long track record of maintaining broad monetary and financial stability. Moody's also took note of the country's recent progress in addressing long-standing weakness in revenue generation as compared to peers. A moderate assessment was also given to the Philippines' fiscal strength, reflecting a moderate government debt burden coupled with weaker debt affordability compared to its peers, although this has improved significantly over the past decade. Moody's also assigned a low assessment to the country's susceptibility to event risk driven by domestic political risk and banking sector risk. Robust capitalization, liquidity, and profitability mitigate event risk, the credit watcher said. Moody's said two of these new laws, the Rice Trade Liberalization Law and RA 11211, are credit positive for the country's economy. Moody's currently rates the Philippines at Baa2 with a stable outlook. Petron Corporation's net income in 2018 plunged 50% to 7.1 billion pesos, mainly due to the decline in global crude prices last year. The country's largest oil refiner said on Tuesday it incurred an inventory loss of 10 billion pesos for the last 2 months of the year, following a sustained decline in world oil prices. It was a challenging year, yet we captured the majority of the market and remained the largest and fastest growing oil company in the country. While our long-term fundamentals remain attractive, we will continue to be prepared and responsive to market conditions, Petron President Ramon Ang said. Operating income for the year reached 18.9 billion pesos, 32% lower than the 27.6 billion pesos last year. Excluding the one-time item, profits would have ended 21% higher at 17 billion pesos. Meanwhile, consolidated sales stood at 557.4 billion, up 28% from the 434.6 billion recorded in 2017. Petron managed combined sales volume of 108.5 million barrels for the year, slightly higher than the 107.8 million barrels sold in 2017. Petron provides nearly 40% of the country's fuel requirements through its Bataan refinery, 30 terminals, and over 2,400 service stations nationwide. Smart Communications has tapped Finnish multinational tech company Nokia for the deployment of 5G wireless broadband equipment and services in educational institutions to allow schools to leverage on the growing popularity of solutions for the so-called Internet of Things. The two companies, under a memorandum of agreement signed on Tuesday, will jointly identify real-world and enterprise-led 5G standalone solutions, which means that data transmission will be solely reliant on 5G connections. This new technology will allow educational institutions to develop their facilities for artificial intelligence, drones, and other IoT solutions. We are happy to partner with Nokia to help develop intelligent solutions and technologies for the benefit of the Philippine education sector, Smart Chairman Manuel Pangilinan said. The deal between the two companies also calls for the deployment of 5G SA technologies such as handsets and applications. 5G is seen to offer massive internet speeds, but mobile use of 5G has yet to be available as industry standards are yet to be set. By working with partners like Nokia in unlocking the full potential of 5G for Filipino enterprises and customers, we are putting the Philippines at par with the rest of the world in preparing for the deployment and adoption of 5G. Smart Chief Technology and Information Advisor Joaquim Horn said. Jai Won, who heads Nokia Asia Pacific, added that this agreement goes beyond the internet speeds that 5G can offer. 5G SA enables introduction of services like real-time remote control of robotics and autonomous driving of transport vehicles in the areas of Industrial Revolution 4.0 with new technologies like network slicing and ultra-reliable and low-latency communications, he said. Smart and Nokia first explored 5G in 2016 when they achieved speeds of 2.5 gigabits per second using 100 megahertz with latency of just 1 millisecond over a live network, the first in the Philippines. Aside from Nokia, Smart and parent company PLDT have been working with Chinese device manufacturer Huawei and Swedish developer Ericsson to study 5G use cases and commercially deploy them sometime this year. Filipino investors and professionals, along with their spouses and children, are now allowed to stay longer in Japan as part of a trade protocol Southeast Asian countries signed with the East Asian economic giant. ASEAN member nations and Japan last week adopted the first protocol to amend the ASEAN-Japan Comprehensive Economic Partnership. The pact covers provisions on trade in services, movement of natural persons, and investment into the CEP, Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez said movement of service suppliers will be better facilitated under the protocol. This new development will ensure that Japan continues to be a strong anchor in regional trade. With other initiatives that ASEAN and Japan are engaged in, such as the renewed ASEAN-Japan 10-year Strategic Economic Cooperation Roadmap, Japan remains an important partner of ASEAN in its economic integration agenda, Lopez said. Under the protocol, several key features were agreed upon that will facilitate the movement of service suppliers in the region. Under the pact, Filipinos can now be granted short-term to long-term business and investor visas to Japan. Professionals in the fields of natural or human sciences and specialists in humanities can also be provided up to 5 years of stay. On top of that, entry and temporary stay will also be given to accompanying spouses and children as dependents of any Filipino business persons or professionals granted permission to work in Japan. The Philippines is eyeing to increase its services exports to Japan with the signing of the protocol. In 2017, Japan was the second highest East Asian country to hire Filipino workers at 112,700. The protocol also intends to promote, facilitate, and protect investments that will strengthen the economic partnership of the parties. Further, it seeks to increase the attractiveness of Southeast Asia as an investment destination for Japanese firms, which in the process will create more jobs in the region. Amounting to $13.2 billion, Japan was the ASEAN's second largest source of external foreign direct investment in 2017. The European Union must hear from Britain how it plans to proceed with Brexit before deciding whether to delay the divorce, negotiator Michel Barnier said Wednesday. On Tuesday, British MPs rejected the Brexit withdrawal plan that Prime Minister Theresa May had agreed with EU negotiators with just 16 days to go before Britain is due to leave the bloc. The lawmakers are to vote again on Wednesday to indicate how they plan to proceed, but Barnier said was clear that Brussels will not renegotiate the agreement now.
Ce sera au gouvernement britannique de nous dire, nous l'espérons de manière positive, comment il souhaite procéder pour réunir enfin une majorité constructive sur une proposition. Le Royaume-Uni, c'est sa responsabilité, doit nous dire ce qu'il veut pour notre relation future. Quel est son choix? Quelle est, comme vous l'avez dit, Madame la Ministre, la ligne claire qui doit être la sienne? Voilà la question qui se pose maintenant, à laquelle nous attendons une réponse. Ce sera au gouvernement britannique de nous dire, nous l'espérons de manière positive.
Previously, EU officials have suggested that Britain may be given extra time in a one-off extension that will not be renewed to agree on an orderly exit plan. But if Britain is still in the bloc when European parliamentary elections begin on May 23, then it must allow its own citizens to vote, complicating prospects of a lengthy delay. Britain will slash import tariffs in case of a no-deal Brexit and will not apply customs checks on the border with Ireland, the government said on Wednesday. Under the new system, which would come into force if Britain leaves the EU on March 29 without an agreement, tariffs would be retained but reduced for some agricultural products to protect British producers. The new regime is aimed at avoiding a jump in prices of EU imports for consumers and a disruption of supply chains, and is intended to be temporary for up to 12 months, pending negotiations on a more permanent system. Tariffs on beef, lamb, pork, poultry, and some dairy would be reduced but retained in most cases. In the auto sector, the government said car makers reliant on European Union supply chains would not face additional tariffs for car parts imported from the EU, but tariffs would apply on imported cars. The new regime would not apply to countries with which Britain already has a free trade agreement and to around to go around 70 developing countries that have preferential access to the British market. That's it for Business News. I'm Cesar Vallejos and I'm one with 25. Eagle News International will be back. Stay with us.
Health is our most important asset, and it should always be a constant effort to seek ways to take care of it. That includes professional medical help from the best available. The Manila-Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated is known as one of the most specialized centers in medical services, backed by several experienced physicians in Chinese medicine. At an accuracy rate of 98%, countless patients who visited Manila-Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated have already been treated and cured.
Marami ko ospital na napuntahan, pero wala ring nangyayari. Somebody introduced me to Manila-Beijing Medical Associated. After 2 treatments, gumanda ang pakiramdam ko.
My friends introduced me Manila-Beijing Medical Associated, and luckily, I got cured. So I sincerely want to thank the doctors of Manila-Beijing Medical Associated.
For the past 30 years, ang dami ko nang na-take na mga gamot. Nothing happened to me. So until one my friend introduced me to Manila-Beijing Medical Associated, you know what? All my illness was cured.
For any health problems or incurable diseases, you can visit Manila-Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated, located at 843B Sabino Padilla Street, Binondo, Manila.
Landmarks, Linggo, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi.
In tennis, world #1 Naomi Osaka crashed out of Indian Wells on Tuesday, routed by Belinda Bencic on a day that saw second-ranked Simona Halep sent packing too. Bencic, ranked 23rd in the world, defeated Osaka 6-3, 6-1 to reach the quarterfinals of the prestigious WTA Premium Mandatory event, where Osaka won her first tour title last year. That marked the start of a remarkable rise that included Osaka's first Grand Slam title at the US Open. She followed that with an Australian Open crown that sent her to #1. But she never found her feet against Bencic, whose crisp ground strokes and precise service game propelled her to victory in 66 minutes. Bencic, who turned 22 on Sunday, is back on the rise after a string of injuries stalled a career that had exploded with 2 precocious WTA titles in 2015. Bencic, who beat 4 top 10 players on the way to the title in Dubai last month, her first trophy in 4 years, next faces 5th-seeded Czech Karolina Pliskova, who downed Anett Kontaveit 7-6, 4-6, 6-2. The victory over Osaka came very high in her list of big wins. Osaka's defeat capped a black day for top seeds in the combined WTA ATP Masters event, with men's world #1 Novak Djokovic stunned by 39th-ranked Filip Kohlschreiber. The women's field lost its top 2 seeds as Romania's Halep, the 2015 Indian Wells winner, fell to Czech teenager Marketa Bondrosa 6-2, 3-6, 6-2. For other story, let's join EBC sports correspondent Penny Sumagi as we discover the birthplace of baseball in America.
Welcome to Hoboken, the birthplace of baseball. Just a short train ride from New York, the city across the Hudson River is known for the birthplace of Frank Sinatra and the famous Carlos Bakery as seen on the reality hit show Cake Boss. But the coolest fact about the city of Hoboken is that the first ever organized baseball game was held at Elysian Fields on June 19, 1846. We learned more about the roots of America's pastime as we spent time with the players and staff of the Stevens Ducks baseball team.
you kind of do feel the history as you walk down the street. You can see it on 11th Street and Washington Street. There's a big monument. This is where the first baseball game ever was, and we are the closest baseball field to that spot because now that spot is paved over, so nobody's playing baseball there anymore. More specifically about this season, we're doing great. Like I said, we're in first place. We just had a great series win, a couple epic comebacks. So this is honestly one of the high water marks of the school year so far, has been this baseball program's play so far.
It's always great to root for the home team because watching baseball here in Hoboken is an experience of a lifetime. I'm Tenny Samagi reporting, and I am 1 with 25.
Thank you, Tenny. In the NBA, Greek star Giannis Antetokounmpo scored 24 points and Chris Middleton had 23 as the NBA best Milwaukee Bucks improved to 51-17 on Tuesday with a 130-113 victory at the New Orleans. The Bucks have not won a playoff series since 2001 and have won an NBA title since 1971, but are on pace to own the home field edge throughout the NBA playoffs. And these are the stories for EN Sports. I'm Ben Bernaldez and I am 1 with 25.
Thank you, Ben, and that's it for tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on Eagle News International, I'm Alma Angeles, always 1 with 25. Good night.